Elizabeth Morgan stood at her classroom window, watching her students play during recess. The bright spring sun made the playground glow. She smiled as two girls taught a new boy how to play hopscotch. This was why she loved teaching third grade. 8-year-olds were still kind and wanted to include everyone. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a calendar reminder. Space station paperwork due today. Elizabeth's heart beat faster. In just 3 weeks, she would leave Earth for the first time. She would travel to Unity Point, the massive space station where human soldiers rested between missions. After writing letters to soldiers for 2 years, she would finally meet some of them face to face. Ms. Morgan. Jason won't give back the ball. A small voice called from the playground. Elizabeth put her phone away and walked outside to solve the playground problem. The big trip would have to wait until after school. Later that evening, Elizabeth sat at her kitchen table. Her small apartment in Portland was neat but simple. A teacher's salary didn't allow for much, but she had saved carefully for this trip. Pictures of her father in his Marine uniform sat on a shelf nearby. He had died 3 years ago, and Elizabeth missed him every day. She looked at the forms on her tablet. The Galactic Confederation had strict rules about humans visiting their space stations. She needed vaccines, security clearances, and many signed agreements. "Dad would be so surprised," she said to the photo. "Your shy little girl going to space." When aliens had first contacted Earth 5 years ago, everyone was shocked. The Galactic Confederation included 32 different intelligent species. They invited Earth to join as a junior member. Humans were still new to space travel, but the Confederation valued human creativity and adaptability. They especially valued human soldiers. Although the Confederation called itself peaceful, it had enemies. Human soldiers were now serving on ships throughout the galaxy. Elizabeth had started writing letters to them shortly after her father died. It helped her feel connected to him. Now she was taking the next step. She would bring care packages, letters from her students, and personal thanks to the men and women serving far from home. Unity Point was the main station where human troops rotated through between missions. Elizabeth finished the last form and sent it. Then she opened her closet and looked at her suitcase. What should she bring for a 3-week trip to space? The Confederation provided almost everything visitors needed, but she wanted to bring personal items for the soldiers. Her students had made drawings and written notes. Parents had donated candies, books, and small games. Elizabeth had added handwritten letters for soldiers she had been writing to for over a year. One soldier in particular, Private Alan Miller, had become a regular pen pal. He served on a ship called Horizon's Edge and wrote funny stories about life in space. Elizabeth found herself looking forward to his letters the most. She packed everything carefully, then got ready for bed. Tomorrow was a school day, and her third graders were starting a science unit on the solar system. The timing was perfect. They were so excited their teacher was going to space. That night, Elizabeth had strange dreams. Stars spoke to her in voices like soft music. They called her name and said she was needed. One star glowed blue and grew closer until it seemed to touch her hand. Elizabeth woke with a start. Her bedroom was dark except for moonlight through the window. The dream had seemed so real. Her right hand tingled slightly. Just excitement, she told herself, and tried to go back to sleep. The next 3 weeks passed quickly. Elizabeth finished the school year, said goodbye to her students, and prepared for her journey. The night before her departure, her friend Kelly came over to drive her to the spaceport in the morning. "I still can't believe you're doing this," Kelly said as they ate pizza. "You who gets nervous ordering coffee from new baristas." Elizabeth laughed. "I know, but it feels right, like something I have to do." "Your dad would be proud," Kelly said, but also worried sick. "Promise you'll be careful up there. Space is dangerous." "Unity Point is perfectly safe," Elizabeth assured her. "It's like a small city with shops and parks. The Confederation has been building space stations for centuries." "Still," Kelly insisted, "you're going somewhere with lots of aliens we barely know. Just stick to the tourist areas, okay?" Elizabeth nodded, but secretly she planned to spend most of her time in the military section of the station. That was the whole point of her trip. That night, she had the dream again. Stars calling her name, a blue light touching her hand. This time, she also heard words she couldn't quite understand, in a language that seemed to bypass her ears and speak directly to her mind. When she woke, her hand was glowing faintly blue. Elizabeth gasped and rubbed her eyes. When she looked again, the glow was gone. "I'm just tired and nervous," she whispered to herself. The journey to space was both terrifying and amazing. The small passenger ship lifted off smoothly, but Elizabeth gripped her seat during the entire ascent. Once they reached orbit, the artificial gravity kicked in and she began to relax. A day later, they docked at Unity Point. Elizabeth pressed her face to the window as they approached. The space station was enormous, shaped like a giant wheel with spokes connecting to a central hub. Lights glittered across its surface and ships of all sizes moved around it. "Welcome to Unity Point," the ship's computer announced. "Please remain seated until docking is complete." Elizabeth gathered her bags, her heart pounding with excitement. She was finally here. After years of writing letters, she would meet real soldiers serving in space. But as the airlock opened and Elizabeth stepped onto the station, she knew something was wrong. People were running. Alarms blared. A voice on the station's speakers called for medical teams to report to the military sector. "What's happening?" Elizabeth asked a passing station officer. The woman barely slowed down. "Quarantine situation. Military personnel returning from Vega sector are sick. Some kind of new virus. You should go to the civilian quarters immediately." Elizabeth stood frozen as the officer hurried away. Her hand began to tingle again, just like in her dream. Something pulled her toward the commotion, not away from it. Private Alan Miller, her pen pal, served in the Vega sector. He might be one of the sick soldiers. Without thinking about the consequences, Elizabeth joined the flow of medical personnel heading toward the emergency. No one stopped her. In the chaos, one more person in the crowd went unnoticed. She had come to thank soldiers. Now they needed help. And somehow, deep inside, Elizabeth felt she had been called here for something more important than delivering care packages. The blue tingle in her hand grew stronger with every step. Elizabeth followed the flow of medical workers down a wide hallway. Unlike the arrival area, which was designed to impress visitors with high ceilings and beautiful alien plants, this part of Unity Point was plain and functional. Signs on the Yao. Walls were in multiple languages with English near the bottom. The crowd turned into a large medical area. Through glass walls, Elizabeth saw rows of beds. Soldiers lay in them, their faces pale and sweaty. Medical staff in protective suits moved quickly between patients. A security guard at the entrance stopped Elizabeth. "Civilian access restricted," he said firmly. Elizabeth fumbled in her bag and pulled out her visitor badge. "I brought care packages. For the soldiers," she said. "From Earth. Maybe they would help the patients feel better." The guard hesitated. A woman in a doctor's coat approached. "Let her through, Sam. Morale is medical too." She looked at Elizabeth with tired eyes. "Just stay by the wall, don't touch anything, and wear this." She handed Elizabeth a thin mask. Inside the quarantine ward, the air smelled like medicine and sweat. Elizabeth clutched her bag of care packages. This wasn't how she had imagined her first meeting with the soldiers. She scanned the room, looking for familiar faces from photos that had come with letters. In the third bed on the right, she spotted him. Private Alan Miller looked much younger and smaller than she had imagined from his confident letters. His brown hair was damp with sweat and his eyes were closed. A monitor beside his bed showed numbers that meant nothing to Elizabeth. She approached slowly. A nurse in a protective suit looked up from checking Alan's vital signs. "I'm Elizabeth Morgan," she said quietly. "I've been writing to Private Miller for over a year. I brought him something from Earth." The nurse nodded. "He can't open anything right now, but I'll make sure he gets it later. You can talk to him, though. Some patients respond to voices even when they seem unconscious." Elizabeth set her bag down and took a small envelope from it. She had written Alan a special letter for their first meeting. Now it seemed silly, but she placed it on his bedside table anyway. "Hello, Alan," she said softly. "It's Elizabeth from Portland. I finally made it to space, just like I promised." Alan didn't respond. Up close, Elizabeth could see how sick he was. His breathing was shallow, and his skin had a grayish tint. Without thinking, Elizabeth reached out and touched his hand. The moment their skin connected, something extraordinary happened. A blue light appeared where their hands met. It spread up Elizabeth's arm like glowing veins under her skin. She tried to pull away but couldn't move. The blue light flowed from Elizabeth into Alan. His back arched slightly, and he took a deep breath. Color returned to his face. The monitor beside his bed began to beep faster. Just as suddenly as it had started, the light faded. Elizabeth stumbled backward, feeling dizzy. The nurse was staring at her with wide eyes. "What did you do?" The nurse whispered. Before Elizabeth could answer, Alan's eyes opened. He looked around in confusion, then focused on Elizabeth. "You're real," he said hoarsely. "I saw you in my dream." The woman with stars in her hands. The ward erupted in activity. Doctors rushed to Alan's bed, checking monitors and taking readings. Someone grabbed Elizabeth's arm and pulled her away. "You need to come with me," said a tall woman in a Confederation military uniform. Her name tag read, Dr. Walsh. She wasn't rough, but her grip was firm. Elizabeth was led to a small examination room nearby. Dr. Walsh was joined by a being that was clearly not human. It had bluish skin and 4 arms, with a face that reminded Elizabeth of a cat. "This is Dr. Zyrex," Walsh explained, Chief Medical Officer for Unity Point. "What happened in there is extremely important. We need to understand it." Elizabeth's head was spinning. "I don't know what happened. I just touched his hand." "You healed him," Zyrex said. Its voice was musical, with an accent Elizabeth couldn't place. "Private Miller has been sick for 6 days. His organs were beginning to fail. Now his vital signs are improving by the minute." "That's impossible," Elizabeth whispered. "Yet we all saw it happen," Dr. Walsh said. "We need to run some tests on you." The next few hours were a blur. Elizabeth's blood was drawn. Scanners hummed over her body. She answered countless questions about her health, her family history, and her strange dreams. "Have others from your family served in space?" Dr. Zyrex asked. Elizabeth shook her head. "My father was a Marine, but he never left Earth. He died before the Confederation contacted us. No one else in my family has been to space. I'm the first." More doctors arrived, including several non-humans. They spoke in low voices, showing each other results on tablets. Elizabeth caught phrases like genetic marker and unprecedented. Finally, Dr. Walsh sat down across from Elizabeth. "We have a partial explanation," she said. "Your genetic structure contains a marker we've never seen before in humans. It's allowing you to counteract the pathogen affecting our soldiers." "A pathogen? I thought it was a virus." Dr. Walsh looked uncomfortable. "We've been keeping this quiet to prevent panic, but I think you deserve to know. Our soldiers aren't sick with a natural disease. They've been attacked with a bioweapon." Elizabeth gasped. "Who would do that?" "We call them the Scourge," said a new voice from the doorway. A man in a captain's uniform stood there, his face stern but kind. "I'm Captain Nathan Reed of the Horizon's Edge. 3 of my crew members are in that ward." Dr. Zyrex brought up a holographic display. It showed a microscopic view of something that looked like tiny machines. The Scourge used nanobots programmed to target human DNA, Zyrex explained. "They're specifically designed to attack humans, which is why our other species aren't affected. Until today, we had no defense." "But I'm not a doctor or a scientist," Elizabeth protested. "I'm just a teacher." "You're much more than that," Captain Reed said. "According to these scans, you have a rare genetic structure that neutralizes their weapon. The question is why." Dr. Walsh showed Elizabeth a scan of her own body. There were glowing spots throughout her nervous system. "We believe you may be the product of ancient genetic experimentation." she said gently. Thousands of years ago, some species in the Confederation visited Earth. They may have modified certain human bloodlines. That's crazy, Elizabeth said. I'm just normal. The evidence suggests otherwise, Xerex said. Your dormant genes were likely activated by proximity to Confederation technology when you arrived at Unity Point. Captain Reed stepped forward. Ms. Morgan, we need your help. There are 36 soldiers in that ward and more coming in from other ships. Whatever you did for Private Miller, we need you to do for the others. Elizabeth felt overwhelmed. This morning she had been a tourist, excited to deliver care packages. Now they were telling her she was some kind of genetic anomaly with healing powers. But she thought of the soldiers lying sick in their beds. If she could help them, how could she refuse? I'll try, she said quietly. But I don't know how I did. It had just happened. We'll figure it out together, Dr. Walsh assured her. As they walked back toward the quarantine ward, an alarm began to sound throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridor. Proximity alert, Captain Reed said, his face tense. A Scourge ship has been detected in the sector. Elizabeth felt the tingling in her hands again. The dreams, the blue light, the sick soldiers, it was all connected somehow. She was part of something bigger than she had ever imagined. I think, she said slowly, that I was meant to be here right now. The station shuddered as something hit it. The lights flickered. The battle had begun. The space station shook again. People grabbed onto walls and doorways to stay standing. Elizabeth stumbled and Captain Reed caught her arm. We need to get to the command center, he said, guiding her down a different hallway. Dr. Walsh and Dr. Xerex followed quickly behind them. What about the sick soldiers? Elizabeth asked, trying to keep up with Reed's long strides. They're being moved to inner sections of the station, Dr. Walsh explained. Safer there if we take damage. They reached a large door with armed guards. Captain Reed showed his identification, and they were allowed inside. The command center of Unity Point was a circular room with screens covering the walls. People of several species worked at control panels, speaking rapidly in different languages. On the main screen, Elizabeth saw a strange ship. It was black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its shape reminded her of a spider with too many legs. Scourge scout vessel, Captain Reed told her. Probably looking for their bioweapon victims. An older man with gray hair and a Confederation admiral's uniform approached them. Reed, explain why you've brought a civilian to my command center during an attack. Admiral Perry, this is Elizabeth Morgan. She's immune to the Scourge bioweapon. More than immune. She can cure it. The Admiral studied Elizabeth with sharp eyes. Can she now? And how exactly does that help us with that? He pointed at the screen showing the Scourge ship. Sir, Dr. Xerex stepped forward. Preliminary scans show Ms. Morgan has unusual neural patterns similar to some Confederation technology interfaces. We believe. A loud alarm cut through the room. A woman at a control panel shouted, Enemy targeting systems activated. They're preparing to fire on the civilian sector. Shields. At maximum, ordered Admiral Perry. Prepare to return fire. Elizabeth felt a strange buzzing in her head. Without thinking, she walked toward the main control panel. People moved out of her way, staring at her. Her hands were glowing blue again. Ms. Morgan stepped back from that. Equipment, Admiral Perry ordered. But Elizabeth couldn't stop. She placed her hands on the control panel. Blue light spread from her fingers into the system. Everyone in the room froze, watching. On the screens, the station's defense system activated. Shields formed patterns that no one had programmed. The Scourge ship fired, but its weapons couldn't penetrate the reconfigured shields. What is she doing? Someone whispered. Saving us all. Captain Reed answered softly. Elizabeth felt connected to Unity Point in a way she couldn't explain. She could sense every system, every circuit. With a thought, she directed the station's weapons to target specific weak points on the Scourge ship that she somehow knew existed. The station fired back. The Scourge ship's outer hull cracked open. It quickly turned and moved away, disappearing into the darkness of space. Elizabeth removed her hands from the control panel. The blue light faded. She turned to face the silent room. "I don't know how. I did that," she said. "Admiral Perry was the first to recover. Captain Reed, Dr. Walsh, Dr. Zyrex, and Ms. Morgan. My office now." The Admiral's office was small and plain. He sat behind a simple desk and looked at Elizabeth with a mixture of suspicion and wonder. "Start talking," he said. "What exactly?" "Are you?" "I'm a third-grade teacher from Portland," Elizabeth replied. "At least that's all I thought I was until today." Dr. Walsh explained about Elizabeth's unique genetic structure and how she had cured Private Miller. Zyrex showed the Admiral the scan results on a tablet. "What just happened in the command center goes beyond healing," Admiral Perry said. "She controlled our defense systems with her mind." "I just knew what to do," Elizabeth said. "I could feel the station like it was part of me." Captain Reed leaned forward. "Admiral, I believe Ms. Morgan is key to fighting the Scourge. I request permission to include her in a special mission." "What mission?" Elizabeth and the Admiral asked at the same time. "The Horizon's Edge received orders yesterday to investigate a Scourge outpost near the Cygnus sector. It's believed to be their bioweapons development facility. If Ms. Morgan can sense and control Confederation technology, she might be able to do the same with Scourge systems." "You want to take a civilian, school teacher on a military mission into enemy territory?" Admiral Perry looked incredulous. "I want to take our only effective weapon against the Scourge," Captain Reed corrected him. Elizabeth's head was spinning. This morning she had been a tourist. Now Captain Reed was suggesting she go on a dangerous mission to an enemy base. "Don't. I have a choice?" she asked. The room fell silent. Dr. Walsh touched her shoulder gently. "Of course you do. No one can force you to help." Elizabeth thought about the sick soldiers, about Private Miller who had recovered because of her touch, about the strange dreams that had led her here. "What happens if I say no and go back to Earth?" she asked. Admiral Perry sighed heavily. "The Scourge have targeted humans specifically, with their bioweapon. Our scientists think it's a prelude to a larger attack. They find us unpredictable, dangerous. They want to eliminate us before we spread further into the galaxy. Earth is in danger," Captain Reed added. "All humans are." Elizabeth looked down at her hands. The blue glow was gone, but she could still feel something different inside her, like a door had opened that couldn't be closed again. "I need time to think," she said. "You have until morning," Admiral Perry replied. "The Horizon's Edge departs at 800 hours. If you choose to join the mission, be at Docking Bay 7. Dr. Walsh escorted Elizabeth to guest quarters. The room was small but comfortable, with a bed, a small table, and a window looking out into space. "Try to rest," Dr. Walsh said. "Your body has been through a lot today." Left alone, Elizabeth sat by the window and stared at the stars. They seemed different. Now, like they were watching her, she thought of her students back on Earth, of her small apartment, of the life she had planned. "I'm just a teacher," she whispered to the stars. "I came to say thank you to soldiers, not to become one." But deep inside, she knew her life had changed forever. The strange abilities, the connection to alien technology, it all meant something. She was part of something bigger now. That night, the dreams returned stronger than ever. The stars spoke clearly this time. "You are a guardian," they told her. "One of many we planted throughout the galaxy long ago. Your awakening was foreseen." When Elizabeth woke at dawn, blue light traced patterns across her skin like glowing circuits. It faded slowly as she watched. Her decision was made. At 0750 hours, Elizabeth arrived at Docking Bay 7 with a small bag. Captain Reed was waiting for her. "I'm still scared," she admitted, "but I'll help if I can." Captain Reed nodded. "That's all anyone can ask. Welcome aboard, Ms. Morgan." The Horizon's Edge was much smaller than Unity Point, but still impressive. The crew stared at Elizabeth as Captain Reed led her to the bridge. Some had heard about what she'd done in the command center. Others had friends who had been healed by her touch. "This is Communications Officer Linda Craig," Captain Reed introduced, a young woman with short blonde hair. "And this is Security Chief Paul Green." A tall man with dark skin nodded to her. "Is she really going to help us fight the Scourge?" Paul asked, not bothering to hide his doubt. Elizabeth looked him straight in the eye. "I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try." The ship's engines hummed to life. Elizabeth felt the vibration through her feet. The stars beckoned through the view screen. Her adventure was just beginning. The horizon's edge moved silently through space. Elizabeth spent her days learning about the ship and its crew. Captain Reed had given her a small cabin near the medical bay where Dr. Walsh had set up equipment to monitor Elizabeth's condition. "Your brain activity is unlike anything I've seen in humans," Dr. Walsh said, studying a screen showing colorful patterns. "It's changing daily." Elizabeth felt the changes. She could sense the ship around her, like a living thing. Sometimes when she touched control panels, they responded to her thoughts without her pressing buttons. Most of the crew was friendly, especially those who had friends healed by her touch at Unity Point. Private Miller had joined them too, fully, recovered and eager to help Elizabeth understand her new abilities. Only Security Chief Paul Green remained cold and distant. Elizabeth often caught him watching her with suspicion. After a week in space, Captain Reed called a meeting to discuss their mission. Officers gathered around a table displaying a holographic map of the Cygnus sector. "Our intelligence suggests the Scourge bioweapons facility is on this moon." Captain Reed pointed to a small dot orbiting a gas giant. "We'll be using our new stealth system to approach undetected." "And then what?" Paul asked. "We're not equipped for a ground assault." "That's where Ms. Morgan comes in," Captain Reed replied. All eyes turned to Elizabeth. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "We believe Elizabeth's ability to interface with technology might help us access their systems," Captain Reed explained. "If we can get her close enough, she might be able to retrieve data on all their bioweapons." "You're betting our lives on a theory," Paul said flatly. "Do you have a better idea, Chief Green?" Captain Reed's voice was calm but firm. Paul looked away. "No, sir." That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what they were asking her to do. She had never been trained for this. She was still discovering her abilities day by day. When she finally dozed off, the star dreams returned. This time, she was floating in space, surrounded by countless stars. A voice that seemed to come from everywhere spoke to her. "You are not alone, Guardian," it said. "Others like you exist throughout the galaxy. The seedlings we planted long ago are awakening." "Who are you?" Elizabeth asked in her dream. "We are the guardians of the first cycle. We created the system to maintain balance. But something has corrupted our work. The Harmony Keepers have become the Scourge." Images flashed through Elizabeth's mind. Ancient beings creating both humans and other species, hiding special genetic codes in some individuals. A vast network of consciousness spanning the galaxy. "The Scourge must be healed, not destroyed," the voice continued. "Find the others like you. Together you can restore balance." Elizabeth woke with a gasp. Blue light covered her body, pulsing with her heartbeat. As she watched, the light sank into her skin, leaving behind faint blue patterns like circuits just below the surface. She pressed the call button for Dr. Walsh. Within minutes, the doctor arrived, looking concerned. Her expression changed to amazement when she saw the patterns on Elizabeth's skin. "It's spreading," Dr. Walsh whispered, running a scanner over Elizabeth's arms. "The genetic changes are accelerating." Elizabeth told her about the dream and what the voice had said. Dr. Walsh listened carefully, taking notes. "We should tell Captain Reed," she said when Elizabeth finished. "This could change our mission parameters." But before they could call the captain, alarms blared throughout the ship. The internal communication system activated. "All hands to battle stations," Captain Reed's voice announced. "Scourge vessels detected on intercept course." Elizabeth and Dr. Walsh rushed to the bridge. The main screen showed 3 black ships, approaching rapidly. "How did they find us?" Linda asked from her communication station. Our stealth systems were active. They must have improved their scanning technology, Captain Reed replied grimly. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Elizabeth felt a strange connection to the approaching ships. The patterns on her skin began to glow faintly. Captain, she said, quietly. I think I can sense their ships. They feel similar to the station systems I connected with. Captain Reed looked at her with hope. Can you do what you did at Unity Point? Take control of their systems? I don't know, they're too far away, I would need to be closer. That's not an option, Paul cut in. We can't get closer without being destroyed. The ship shuddered as the first enemy shots hit their shields. Shields at 70%, an officer reported. Elizabeth closed her eyes. She tried to reach out with her mind toward the enemy ships. She felt something, a faint connection like a whisper from far away, but couldn't grasp it. I need to be at a primary interface, she said, suddenly opening her eyes. The main computer core. Captain Reed nodded. Chief Green, escort her there. Paul looked like he wanted to object but followed orders. He led Elizabeth quickly through corridors as the ship continued to shake under enemy fire. The computer core was a circular room filled with glowing panels. At the center stood a column of light, the ship's main processing unit. Whatever you're going to do it fast, Paul said as another hit rocked the ship. We're running out of time. Elizabeth approached the light column. Instinctively, she placed both hands into the beam. Blue light exploded from the contact point, racing up her arms and covering her entire body. She felt her consciousness expand. Suddenly, she was everywhere at once, in every system of the horizon's edge, feeling every circuit, every power conduit. Beyond the ship, she sensed the Scourge vessels, alien but somehow familiar. Elizabeth pushed her awareness toward them. This time, the distance didn't matter. Her mind traveled across space and touched their systems. On the bridge, the crew watched in amazement as the Scourge ship suddenly stopped firing. What's happening? Captain Reed demanded. Their weapons have powered down, Linda reported, stunned. They're just sitting there. In the computer core, Elizabeth floated a few inches above the floor, surrounded by blue light. Paul stared at her in shock, his earlier suspicion replaced by awe. Elizabeth could see through the Scourge ship's sensors now. She could access their navigation, their weapons, their communication systems. They were like puzzles her mind could easily solve. But the strain was enormous. Blood began to drip from her nose. The blue patterns on her skin pulsed painfully. With a final surge of will, Elizabeth commanded the Scourge ships to move away. They turned slowly and accelerated into the distance. The blue light surrounding Elizabeth flickered and went out. She collapsed to the floor. Paul caught her before she hit the ground. He immediately called for medical assistance. What did you do? He asked quietly. Convince them we weren't here, Elizabeth whispered before losing consciousness. She woke days later in the medical bay. Dr. Walsh and Captain Reed stood beside her bed. Welcome back, Captain Reed said with a smile. You saved us all. The Scourge ships? Elizabeth asked weakly. Long gone. We're now in orbit around the moon where their facility is located. No sign they know we're here. Elizabeth tried to sit up. The blue patterns on her skin were now permanent, though they only glowed when she used her abilities. I need to tell you what I learned when I connected with their ships, she said urgently. The Scourge aren't what we thought. They're part of an ancient system gone wrong. Captain Reed pulled up a chair. Tell me everything. Elizabeth knew that what she had learned would change their mission completely. The fate of humanity, and the entire galaxy, might depend on understanding the truth about the Scourge. And somehow, she was the key to it all. Elizabeth sat with Captain Reed and the senior officers in the ship's meeting room. The blue patterns on her skin glowed softly as she explained what she had learned about the Scourge. They were created by the same ancient beings who modified my ancestors, she said. The Scourge were originally called Harmony Keepers. They were designed to maintain balance in the galaxy. But something went wrong over the millennia. They began to see diversity as chaos rather than strength. So they're what? Ancient robots? Artificial intelligence? Linda asked. Not exactly, Elizabeth replied. They're more like a collective consciousness using technology as a body. They see humans as particularly chaotic because we're unpredictable and adaptable. Dr. Walsh showed scanner images of Elizabeth's brain. Elizabeth's genetic modifications allow her to connect with the same technology the Scourge use. In essence, she speaks their language. Captain Reed studied the tactical display showing the Scourge facility on the moon below them. Can you use this connection to infiltrate their base without putting our team at risk? I think so, Elizabeth said. But I need to get closer. We'll need to land on the moon. Paul, who had become less hostile since watching Elizabeth save the ship, nodded. I've prepared a small landing craft with stealth capabilities. It can get us within a mile of their facility. Us? Elizabeth asked. You'll need protection, Paul said simply. I'm going with you. Captain Reed agreed. Chief Green will accompany you. The rest of us will remain in orbit, ready to extract you if necessary. Dr. Walsh gave Elizabeth a small device. This will monitor your neural patterns. If you start to become overwhelmed, it will alert Paul immediately. The landing craft was small and cramped. Elizabeth and Paul sat side by side as it detached from the horizon's edge and descended toward the moon's surface. The rocky landscape below looked barren and hostile. What made you change your mind about me? Elizabeth asked quietly. Paul kept his eyes on the controls. I've lost friends to the Scourge. I wanted someone to blame. But when I saw what you did, sacrificing yourself to save us, I realized I was wrong about you. They landed in a small canyon that would hide the craft from Scourge sensors. The moon had a thin atmosphere that humans could breathe for short periods, but it was cold. They wore thermal suits for the journey to the facility. As they approached, on foot, Elizabeth began to feel a pull toward the alien structure. It rose from the rocky ground like a black crystal, absorbing the starlight instead of reflecting it. I can sense it, she whispered. There's so much data flowing through those walls, so many minds connected to it. They found cover behind a rock formation about 500 yards from the facility entrance. No guards were visible. The Scourge rarely expected physical intruders. What now? Paul asked. Elizabeth closed her eyes. The blue patterns on her skin brightened. I'm going to try to connect to their network from here. If I can get in, I might be able to open a path for us. She reached out with her mind, just as she had done with the Scourge ships. At first, she felt resistance, security systems beyond anything human technology could create. But then something unexpected happened. The systems recognized her. Guardian protocol accepted, a voice said in her mind. Access granted. Elizabeth gasped. Her eyes flew open. They're letting me in. The systems recognize me as a Guardian. Is that good or bad? Paul looked concerned. I don't know yet, but I think we can walk right through the front entrance. They won't see us as intruders. Paul didn't look convinced, but he followed Elizabeth as she walked confidently toward the facility. The black doors slid open as they approached. Inside, the corridors were lit with a soft purple glow. Where are all the Scourge? Paul whispered, weapon ready. They don't have physical bodies like we do, Elizabeth explained. The ships in this facility are their bodies. They exist as energy patterns in the technology. Elizabeth let her instincts guide her through the winding corridors. Each turn brought them deeper into the facility until they reached a massive central chamber. In the middle floated a sphere of swirling black and purple energy. That's it, Elizabeth whispered. The Scourge central consciousness for this sector, the source of the bioweapons. Paul readied his weapon. So how do we destroy it? Elizabeth placed a hand on his arm. We don't. Remember what I learned? They were created to maintain harmony. They're corrupted, not evil. I need to try to communicate with them. And if communication fails? Elizabeth didn't answer. She walked toward the sphere, her blue patterns glowing brighter with each step. The sphere seemed to pulse in response. I am Elizabeth Morgan of Earth, she said aloud. I am a Guardian. I request direct communication. The sphere expanded suddenly, surrounding Elizabeth in swirling energy. Paul shouted her name, but his voice seemed far away. Inside the sphere, Elizabeth found herself in what looked like an endless starfield. A figure formed from the stars stood before her. It had a vaguely humanoid shape but no distinct features. "Guardian Protocol recognized," it said. "Why do you interfere with our harmony maintenance?" "Your understanding of harmony is flawed," Elizabeth replied. "True harmony comes from diversity, not uniformity. You were created to protect life, not eliminate it. Humans are chaotic, unpredictable, a threat to galactic stability." Elizabeth felt other consciousnesses watching, ancient, powerful minds. The original Guardians were observing this exchange. "Let me show you what human chaos really is," she said. Elizabeth opened her mind completely. She showed the Scourge her life, teaching children, helping others, the compassion that drove her to thank soldiers serving far from home. She showed them human art, music, literature, the beauty that came from creativity and freedom. She showed them human kindness, sacrifice, and love. But she also showed human understanding of true harmony. Ecosystems where diverse species supported each other, communities where different perspectives led to better solutions. The star figure trembled. Error in harmony parameters detected. Recalibration required. The other presences grew stronger. The original Guardians were stepping in. Elizabeth felt them flowing through her, using her connection to reach the corrupted system. "You have done well, seedling," they told her. "We will help heal what was broken." Outside the sphere, Paul watched in amazement as the swirling energy changed from black and purple to blue and gold. The entire facility began to pulse with the new colors. When the sphere finally released Elizabeth, she collapsed. Paul rushed to catch her. The blue patterns on her skin were fading. "What happened? What did you do?" he asked. Elizabeth smiled weakly. "I showed them the truth, and the original Guardians helped reset their understanding of harmony. They won't attack humans anymore, they're healing. All of them, throughout the galaxy. The change is spreading through their network. It will take time, but yes, all of them." They returned to the horizon's edge with the news. Captain Reed could hardly believe it was over. "You ended a war before it truly began," he told Elizabeth. "The Confederation will want to award you the highest honors." But Elizabeth shook her head. "I just want to teach my students. Tell them about the stars." 2 months later, Elizabeth stood in her classroom in Portland. The blue patterns on her skin had faded to faint lines that looked like simple tattoos. Her students didn't seem to notice. On her desk sat a small crystal given to her by the Guardians, a communication device. There were others like her awakening across the galaxy. Someday they would need to meet. But for now, Elizabeth was content. She looked out at her students as they worked on their science projects about space. "Ms. Morgan," one little boy asked, "is it true you saved the galaxy?" Elizabeth smiled. "I just helped remind everyone that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. That's a lesson worth teaching, don't you think?" Outside her classroom window, the stars waited patiently for her return.